In this story, when you hear the owl, it means turn the page. The Wind in the Willows. The riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little home. He had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur. His back was aching, and his arms were weary. Suddenly, he flung down his brush on the floor. "Bother," he said, and "Oh, blow," and also "Hang spring cleaning." Then he bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. He made for a steep little tunnel outside. "Up we go," he said as he scraped and scrabbled, working busily with his little paws. At last, pop, his snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. "This is better than whitewashing," he said to himself. In the delight of spring without its cleaning, he rambled hither and thither through the meadows. And instead of having an uneasy conscience pricking him and whispering, "Whitewash," he could only feel how jolly it was to be idle. Suddenly he came to a river. Never in his life had he seen a river before. All was a shake and a shiver, glints and gleams and sparkles, rustle and swirl, chatter and bubble. Mo was fascinated. A dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle in the heart of it. Then, as he looked, it winked at him. It was an eye. A little brown face with whiskers gradually appeared, small neat ears and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. The two animals stood and regarded each other curiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat presently. He stepped into a little boat, sculled smartly across, and made fast. Then the rat held up his forepaw as the mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And Mole, to his surprise and delight, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. "This has been a wonderful day," said he as the rat shoved off. "Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "What have you been doing then?" "Is it as nice as all that?" asked Mole shyly. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly as he began to row. "Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing," he went on dreamily. "Messing about in boats." "Look ahead, Rat!" cried the mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt, and Rat lay on his back at the bottom of the boat. He picked himself up with a pleasant laugh. "Look here, if you've really nothing else to do this morning, supposing we go down the river together and have a day of it." The mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness. "What a day I'm having! Let us start at once," he said. "Hold on a minute then," said the rat. He tied the boat to the landing stage and climbed back into his hole above. Shortly, he reappeared with a fat wicker luncheon basket. "Shove that under your feet," he said to the mole. Then he untied the boat and took the sculls again. Mole trailed a paw in the water while the water rat sculled on steadily. What lies over there? Mole asked, waving a paw. That? Oh, that's just the wild wood, answered the rat. We don't go there much, we riverbankers. And beyond the wild wood? Mole asked. Beyond the wild wood comes the wide world, said the rat. I've never been there. And I'm never going. Nor are you either, if you've got any sense at all. Now then, here's our backwater at last, where we're going to lunch. The rat brought the boat alongside the bank and made her fast. He helped the still awkward mole safely ashore and swung out the luncheon basket. When the music stops, turn your cassette over. His excited friend shook out the tablecloth and spread it. Then he took out all the mysterious packets one by one. Oh my, he exclaimed at each in turn. When all was ready, Rat said, Now, pitch in, old fella. From where they sat, they could get a glimpse of the main stream across the island that separated them. Just then, another boat flashed into view. The rower, a short, stout toad, splashed badly and rolled a good deal. He'll be out of that boat in a minute if he rolls like that, said the rat. Well, I suppose we ought to be moving. I wonder which of us ought to pack the luncheon basket. Oh, please, let me, said the mole. So, of course, Rat let him. Packing the basket was not quite such pleasant work as unpacking it. The afternoon sun was getting low as the rat sculled gently homewards. Already Mole was quite at home in a boat, so he thought. He was getting a bit restless, and presently he said, Ratty, please, I want to row now. The rat shook his head with a smile. Not yet, young friend, he said. Wait till you've had a few lessons. It's not as easy as it looks. The mole was quiet for a minute or two. He began to feel jealous of Rat. His pride began to whisper that he could do it every bit as well. Suddenly, he jumped up and seized the sculls. Rat was taken by surprise and fell backwards off his seat. Stop it, you silly ass, cried the rat from the bottom of the boat. The mole made a great dig at the water. He missed the surface altogether. His legs flew up over his head. The next moment... Splosh! Over went the boat, and he found himself struggling in the river. Oh my, how cold the water was! How it sang in his ears as he went down, down. Then a firm paw gripped him by the back of his neck. It was the rat. Laughing, Rat propelled the helpless animal ashore. Then he hauled him onto the bank. Mole was a squashy lump of misery. The rat rubbed him down a bit and wrung some of the wet out of him. Now, he said, trot up and down until you're warm and dry again while I dive for the luncheon basket. When all was ready to start once more, the mole took his place in the boat. In a low voice, he said, Ratty, I'm very sorry. My heart fails me when I think how I might have lost that beautiful luncheon basket. I have been a complete ass. Will you forgive me? That's all right, bless you, responded the rat cheerily. What's a little wet to a water rat? I'm more in the water than out of it most days. Look here, I really think you had better stop with me for a little time. It's very plain and rough, not like Toad's fine house, but you haven't seen that yet. Still, I can make you comfortable, and I'll teach you to row and to swim. The mole was so touched by his kind manner of speaking that he could find no voice to answer him. When they got home, The rat made a bright fire in the parlour and planted Mole in an armchair in front of it. He told him river stories until supper time. Supper was a most cheerful meal. Shortly afterwards, a terribly sleepy Mole had to be escorted upstairs to the best bedroom. He laid his head on the pillow in great peace and contentment. This day was only the first of many similar ones for Mole. Each of them was longer and full of interest as the ripening summer moved onwards. He learned to swim and to row, and with his ear to the reed stems, he could sometimes catch what the wind whispered among them. Wind in the Willows. The open road.
Ratty, said the Mole suddenly one bright summer morning, if you please, I want to ask you a favour. Won't you take me to call on Mr. Toad? I've heard so much about him.
Why, certainly, said the Water Rat, jumping to his feet. Get the boat out, and we'll paddle up there at once. It's never the wrong time to call on Toad. Always good-tempered, always glad to see you, always sorry when you go.
He must be a very nice animal,
said Mole, as he got into the boat and took the sculls. He is indeed the best of animals, replied Rat. So simple, so good-natured, and so affectionate. Perhaps he's not very clever, but we can't all be geniuses. Rounding a bend in the river, they came in sight of a handsome old house of red brick. There's Toad Hall, said the Rat. Toad is rather rich, and this is one of the nicest houses in these parts. They glided up a creek that led to Toad's boathouse. There they disembarked, and then strolled across the lawns in search of Toad. He was found resting in a wicker garden chair with a large map spread out on his knees.
"Hooray!"
he cried, jumping up on seeing them.
"This is splendid! I was just going to send a boat down the river for you, Ratty, to fetch you here at once. I want you badly, both of you. Now, what will you take? Come inside and have something."
Let's sit quiet a bit, Toady, said the Rat. He threw himself into an easy chair. It's about your rowing, I suppose.
"Oh, pooh, boating," replied Toad in disgust. "I've given that up. Sheer waste of time. No, I've discovered the real thing. Come with me, and you shall see what you shall see."
Toad led the way to the stable-yard. There they saw a gypsy caravan, shining with newness, painted a canary yellow with red wheels.
"There you are!" cried the Toad.
There's real life for you.
The open road, the dusty highway, the heath, the common, the hedgerows, the rolling downs, villages, towns, cities, here today, up and off, somewhere else tomorrow. Travel, change, interest, excitement, the whole world before you. And this is the finest cart that was ever built.
The mole was tremendously interested and excited. He followed Toad eagerly up the steps and into the caravan. The rat snorted, thrust his hands deep into his pockets, and remained where he was. It was indeed very compact and comfortable. Little sleeping bunks, a little table that folded up against the wall, a cooking stove, rockers, pots, pans, and kettles.
All complete, said Toad. You'll find nothing whatever has been forgotten. We make our start this afternoon.
I beg your pardon, said the rat slowly. Did I overhear you say something about we and start and this afternoon?
Now, you dear good old Ratty, said Toad imploringly. You know you've got to come. I can't possibly manage without you. You surely don't want to stick to that dull old river all your life. I want to show you the world.
I don't care, said the rat. I'm not coming, and that's flat. And I am going to stick to my old river. And what's more, Mole's going to stick to me and do as I do. Aren't you, Mole?
Of course I am,
said Mole loyally.
All the same, it sounds as if it might have been fun.
The rat wavered. He hated disappointing people, and he was very fond of Mole.
Come along in and have some lunch, Toad said. We'll talk it over.
The lunch was excellent, as everything at Toad Hall always was. Toad painted life on the open road in such glowing colours that Mole could hardly sit on his chair for excitement. Somehow it soon seemed taken for granted by all three of them that the trip was a settled thing. When they were quite ready, Toad led his companions to the paddock to capture the old grey horse. The horse took a good deal of catching. At last it was caught and harnessed, and they set off. It was a golden afternoon. Birds called and whistled to them cheerily. Good-natured wayfarers passing them gave them good day. When the music stops, turn your cassette over. Late in the evening, tired and happy, and miles from home, they drew up on a common. The horse was turned loose to graze, and they ate their simple supper on the grass beside the cart. At last they turned in to their little bunks. Toad, kicking out his legs, sleepily said,
Well, good night, you fellows. Talk about your old river.
I don't talk about my river, replied Rat, but I think about it. Mole reached out from under his blanket and gave Rat's paw a squeeze.
I'll do whatever you like, Ratty,
he whispered.
Shall we run away early tomorrow morning and go back to the river?
No, thanks, awfully, whispered back the rat. I ought to stick by Toad until this trip is ended. It wouldn't be safe for him to be left to himself. It won't take very long. His fads never do.
Toad slept very soundly. No amount of shaking could rouse him out of bed next morning. Rat saw to the horse, lit a fire, and got things ready for breakfast. Mole trudged off to the nearest village to buy the things Toad had forgotten to provide. That evening they camped as before on a common. This time the two guests took care that Toad should do his share of work. When the time came for starting next morning, Toad was not so keen on the outdoor life. Their way lay along narrow lanes. It was not till the afternoon that they came out on the high road. They were strolling along it when they heard a faint hum. On glancing back, they saw a small cloud of dust approaching. Hardly regarding it, they turned to resume their conversation. Then, in an instant, the peaceful scene was changed. A blast of wind and a whirl of sound made them jump for the nearest ditch. It was on them! It rang brazenly in their ears, while a cloud of dust completely enveloped them. For a fraction of a second, they had a glimpse of a magnificent motor car. In a moment, it had disappeared into the distance, a droning bee once more. The old grey horse, very upset, reared and plunged. Despite all Mole's efforts to calm him, he drove the cart backwards towards the deep ditch at the side of the road. Then there was a crash. The canary-coloured cart lay on its side in the ditch, a wreck. The rat danced up and down in the road. "You villains!" he shouted. He shook both his fists. "You scoundrels! You road hogs! Glorious sight!" murmured Toad dreamily. "The only way to travel! Oh, bliss! Oh, pooh-pooh! Oh, my! To think I never knew! All these wasted years! But now, what dust cloud shall spring up behind me as I speed on my reckless ways? What carts I shall fling carelessly into the ditch? Horrid little carts! Carts! Canary-coloured carts!"
What shall we do with him?
asked Mole. "Nothing at all," replied Rat. "You see, I know him from of old. He is now possessed. He has got a new craze." An inspection of the cart showed them that it would travel no longer. The rat took the horse by the head. "Come on," he said grimly. "It's 5 or 6 miles to the nearest town, and we shall just have to walk it." "Now, look here, Toad," said the rat sharply. "As soon as we get to the town, you'll have to go to the police station and complain about that motor car and who it belongs to. Then you'll have to arrange for the cart to be mended."
"Complain?" murmured Toad dreamily. "Me complain of that beautiful, heavenly vision? Mend the cart! I've done with carts forever!"
The rat turned from him in despair. "You see what it is?" he said to Mole. "He's quite hopeless. I give it up." When they reached the town, they left the horse at an inn stable. Afterwards, they went to the railway station, and eventually a slow train arrived that landed them not far from Toad Hall that evening. They escorted the spellbound Toad to his door and pushed him inside it. Then they got their boat from the boathouse and rowed home. At a very late hour, they sat down to supper in their own cosy riverside parlour. The following evening, the Mole was sitting on the riverbank fishing. The rat came along to find him. "Heard the news?" he said. "Toad went up to town by an early train this morning, and he has ordered a large and very expensive motor car."
Wind in the Willows. The Wild Wood. The mole had long wanted to meet the badger. He seemed by all accounts to be such an important person. But whenever the mole mentioned his wish to the water rat, he always found himself put off.
Couldn't you ask him here to dinner?
Asked the mole. He wouldn't come, replied the rat. Badger hates invitations and dinner and all that sort of thing.
Well then, supposing we go and call on him,
suggested the mole. Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't like that at all, said the rat, quite alarmed. He's so very shy. Besides, he lives in the very middle of the wild wood.
Well, supposing he does,
said the mole.
You told me that the wild wood was all right.
Oh, I know, so it is, replied the rat. But we won't go there just now. It's a long way. He'll be coming along some day if you'll wait quietly. But the badger never came along. One winter afternoon, when the rat was dozing in his armchair by the fire, Mole decided to go out by himself and explore the wild wood, and perhaps strike up an acquaintance with Mr. Badger. He slipped out of the warm parlour into the open air. It was a cold afternoon. The country lay bare and leafless around him. With great cheerfulness, he pushed on towards the wild wood. There was nothing to alarm him at first entry. Twigs crackled under his feet, logs tripped him. Fungi on stumps resembled faces and startled him for a moment, but it was all fun and exciting. He went on to where the light was less. The trees crouched nearer and nearer, and holes made ugly mouths at him on either side. Everything was very still now. Dusk advanced on him steadily. Then the faces began. It was over his shoulder that he first thought he saw a face. A little evil wedge-shaped face, looking out at him from a hole. When he turned and confronted it, the thing had vanished. He quickened his pace, telling himself not to begin imagining things. He passed another hole, and another, and then, yes, no, yes. Certainly a little narrow face with hard eyes had flashed up for an instant from a hole and was gone. Then suddenly every hole, far and near, seemed to possess its face, all hard-eyed, evil and sharp. If only he could get away from the holes in the banks, he thought, there would be no more faces. He swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. Then the pattering began. He thought it was only falling leaves at first. Then the sound grew, and he knew it was the pat, pat, pat of little feet. Was it in front or behind? It seemed to be first one, and then the other, then both. As he stood to hearken, a rabbit came running hard towards him through the trees.
Get out of this, you fool, get out.
The mole heard him mutter as he disappeared down a burrow. The pattering increased till it sounded like hail on the ground. The whole wood seemed running now, hunting, chasing, closing round something or somebody. In panic, he began to run too, he knew not whither. At last he took refuge in the deep, dark hollow of an old beech tree. He was too tired to run any further. He snuggled down into the dry leaves which had drifted into the hollow and hoped he was safe for a time. He lay there, panting and trembling. Now he knew that dread thing which other little dwellers in field and hedgerow had encountered here. The rat had vainly tried to shield him from it. The terror of the wild wood. When the music stops, turn your cassette over. Meantime, the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by his fireside. Then a coal slipped. The fire crackled and sent up a spurt of flame. Waking with a start, he looked round for Mole, but he was not there. He listened for a time. The house seemed very quiet. Then he called, "Mole!" several times. Receiving no answer, he went into the hall. The mole's cap was missing from its peg. The rat left the house and examined the muddy surface of the ground outside. He could see the mole's tracks. They ran in the direction of the wild wood. Rat looked grave for a minute or two. Then he re-entered the house, strapped a belt round his waist, and shoved a brace of pistols into it. Taking up a stout cudgel, he set off for the wildwood at a smart pace. It was already getting towards dusk when he reached the wood. He plunged in, looking anxiously for any signs of his friend. Here and there, wicked little faces popped out of holes, but vanished immediately at the sight of Rat with his pistols and cudgel. He made his way through the wood, all the time calling out, "Mole! Mole! Mole! Where are you? It's me! It's old Rat!" At last, he heard an answering cry. Guiding himself by the sound, he made his way through the gathering darkness to the foot of an old beech tree, with a hole in it. From out of the hole came a feeble voice saying,
"Ratty, is that really you?"
There he found the mole, exhausted and still trembling.
"Oh, Rat,"
he cried.
"I've been so frightened, you can't think."
"Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "But you shouldn't have gone and done it, Mole. We riverbankers hardly ever come here by ourselves," explained the rat. "If we have to come, we come in couples, at least. Now then, we really must pull ourselves together and make a start for home while there is still a little light left."
"Dear Ratty,"
said the poor mole,
"I'm dreadfully sorry, but I'm simply dead beat. You must let me rest here a while longer."
"Oh, all right," said the good-natured rat. "Rest away." So the mole got well into the dry leaves and stretched himself out. Presently he dropped off to sleep. The rat covered himself up too and lay patiently waiting, with a pistol in his paw. At last the mole woke up, much refreshed. The rat went to the entrance of their retreat and put his head out. "What's up, Ratty?" asked Mole. "Snow is up," replied Rat. "Or rather, down. It's snowing hard. Well, it can't be helped. We must make a start. The worst of it is, I don't know exactly where we are,
And now this snow makes everything look so very different. They set out bravely. But an hour or two later, they were dispirited and weary. The snow was getting so deep that they could hardly drag their little legs through it. There seemed to be no end to this wood, and no beginning. And worst of all, no way out. Suddenly, the mole tripped up and fell forward with a squeal.
"Oh, my leg!"
he cried. "Poor old mole," said the rat kindly. "Let's have a look. Ah, yes, you've cut your shin. It's a very clean cut. Looks as if it were made by a sharp edge of something in metal. Funny." After carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, Rat began busily scraping in the snow. Suddenly he cried, "Hooray!"
"What have you found, Ratty?"
asked the mole. "Come and see," said the delighted rat. Mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look.
"Well," he said, "some very careless person has left his door scraper just where it's sure to trip everybody up."
"Now look here," said the rat. "Scrape and scratch and dig, and hunt around if you want to sleep dry and warm tonight." So Mole scraped busily too, more to oblige the rat than for any other reason. After some 10 minutes' hard work, Rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He worked till he could get a paw through and feel. Hard at it went the two animals, till at last the results of their labours stood in full view. In the side of what had seemed to be a snowbank stood a solid-looking little door painted a dark green. The mole fell backwards in sheer surprise and delight. A brass plate next to the bell pull was neatly engraved in capital letters. By the moonlight, they could read, "Mr. Badger." Wind in the Willows. Home, sweet home. It was mid-December, and night was falling fast. A first thin fall of powdery snow lay on the ground.
"It looks as if we're coming to a village,"
said the mole somewhat dubiously. He slackened his pace. "Oh, never mind," said the water rat. "At this season of the year, they're all safe indoors by this time, sitting around the fire. Men, women and children, dogs and cats and all. We shall slip through all right, without any bother. And we can have a look at them through the windows if you like, and see what they're doing." The two spectators, so far from home themselves, felt wistful as they watched. They saw a cat being stroked, a sleepy child picked up and huddled off to bed, and a tired old man stretch and knock out his pipe on the end of a smouldering log. Once beyond the village, they could smell through the darkness the friendly fields again. They braced themselves for the last long stretch home. They plodded on silently, each thinking his own thoughts. Rat was walking a little way ahead, his eyes fixed on the straight grey road in front of him. He did not notice Mole had stopped dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither.
"Please stop, Ratty,"
pleaded Mole.
"I've just come across the smell of my old home."
and it's close by here. I must go to it. Oh, come back, Ratty. Please come back.
The rat was by this time too far ahead to hear clearly what the mole was calling, and he too could smell something, approaching snow.
Mole, we mustn't stop now, he called back. We'll come back for it tomorrow, whatever it is you found.
The mole felt a big sob gathering somewhere low down inside him. With an effort, he caught up with Rat, who began chattering cheerfully about what they could do when they got back, and how jolly a fire of logs in the parlour would be, and what a supper he meant to eat. A considerable way further on, Rat said kindly,
Look here, Mole, old chap. You seem dead tired. No talk left in you. We'll sit down for a minute and rest.
The mole sat forlornly on a tree stump. The sob that he had fought with so long refused to be beaten. At last he gave up the struggle, and the sob came up. And then another. And another. Rat was astonished and dismayed. He patted Mole gently on the shoulder. What is it, old fellow? Whatever can be the matter? Tell me what I can do. Mole found it difficult to get any words out between the upheavals of his chest.
I know it's a shabby, dingy little place, not like your cosy quarters or Toad's beautiful hall. But it was my own little house, and I was fond of it. And I went away and forgot all about it. And then I smelt it suddenly on the road. When I called, you wouldn't listen.
Rat waited until Mole's sobs subsided. We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow. Cheer up, take my arm, and we'll soon be back there again. They moved on in silence for some little way. Then Mole stood a moment, rigid, his uplifted nose quivering slightly. Then he nosed his way over a field, open and bare in the faint starlight. Suddenly, without giving warning, he dived. The rat promptly followed him down the tunnel to which his unerring nose had led him. It seemed a long time to Rat before the passage ended and he could stand erect and shake himself. The mole struck a match. Directly facing them was his little front door with Mole End painted over the bell pull at the side. When the music stops, turn your cassette over. Mole hurried Rat through the door, lit a lamp in the hall, and took one glance round his old home. He saw the dust lying thick on everything, saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house and its worn, shabby contents, and collapsed again on a hall chair, his nose in his paws.
"Oh, Ratty,"
he cried dismally.
"Why ever did I do it? Why did I bring you to this cold little place on a night like this? You might have been at River Bank by this time, toasting your toes before a blazing fire, with all your own nice things about you."
The rat paid no heed. He was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles. "What a capital little house this is," he called out cheerily. "So compact, so well planned, everything here and in its place. The first thing we want is a good fire." Mole roused himself and dusted and polished with energy. The rat ran to and fro with armfuls of fuel and soon had a cheerful blaze roaring up the chimney. But soon Mole had another fit of the blues.
"Rat,"
He moaned.
"how about your supper? You poor, hungry, weary animal. I've nothing to give you, not a crumb."
"Rouse yourself! Pull yourself together!" said Rat. "Come with me and forage." They found a tin of sardines, a box of biscuits, and a German sausage encased in silver paper. "There's a banquet for you," observed the rat as he arranged the table. Then he made for the cellar door, and presently reappeared with a bottle of beer in each paw, and another under each arm. They had just got to work with the sardine opener, when sounds were heard outside. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet in the gravel, and a confused murmur of tiny voices.
"I think it must be the field mice," said Mole. "They go round carol singing at this time of year. They come to Mole End last of all, and I used to give them hot drinks and supper too, sometimes."
"Let's have a look at them," cried the rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight. In the forecourt, lit by the rays of a lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern was just saying,
"Now then, 1, 2, 3.
Forthwith, their shrill little voices uprose on the air, singing an old-time carol. "Very well sung, boys," cried the rat heartily, when the voices had ceased. "And now come along in, all of you, and warm yourselves by the fire, and have something hot."
"Yes, come along, field mice,"
cried the mole eagerly.
"This is quite like old times. Shut the door after you. Now you just wait a minute while we..." "Oh, Ratty,"
he cried in despair.
"whatever are we doing? We've nothing to give them."
"You leave all that to me," said the rat. "Here, you with the lantern. Are there any shops open at this hour of night?"
"Why, certainly, sir.
replied the field mouse.
At this time of year, our shops keep open all sorts of hours."
"Then look here," said the rat. "You go off at once and get me..." Mole could hear much muttered conversation. Finally, there was a chink of coin passing from paw to paw. The field mouse was given a large basket for his purchases, and off he hurried. The field mouse returned a little later, staggering under the weight of the basket. The contents were tumbled out on the table, and in a very few minutes supper was ready. Mole took the head of the table. He saw his friends' faces brighten and beam as they fell to without delay. What a happy homecoming this had turned out to be after all. The field mice clattered off at last, very grateful and showering wishes of the season.
When the door had closed on the last of them, Mole and Rat drew up their chairs to the fire and discussed the events of the day. At last the Rat, with a tremendous yawn, said,
"Oh, Mole, old chap, I'm ready to drop. Bet your bunk over on that side. Very well, then. I'll take this."
He clambered in and was soon slumbering. The weary Mole was also glad to turn in without delay. Before he closed his eyes, he let them wander round his old room. He knew how much it all meant to him. He did not want to abandon his new life, but it was good to think he had this place to come back to, which was all his own.